Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows Compiler. Today we will look again at the form in our application and add a toolbar and tooltips. This was our application at the end of the last video. We are going to add two things to our application today. First of all, we're going to be adding a toolbar to the top of our form. There are two types of toolbars we can use, the traditional toolbar and the newer ribbon toolbar. The ribbon toolbar is used where there are a great many parts of the application that need to be accessed easily. This can be seen in applications like Microsoft Office. However, the ribbon toolbar is quite sophisticated and overkill for this particular application. So we're just going to be using the traditional toolbar, whereby a row of icons will appear at the top of the form, allowing the user access to different parts of the application. So let's go into the form designer and create our toolbar. So here we are in the form designer. We have two forms in this application, a progress bar form and the main form. So let's select the main form. And here are all the controls on our form. We're going to be adding the toolbar to the very top of the form. So we're going to have to move all the objects on the form down slightly to give us a bit of room. So we will select all of the objects on the form and move them down. Right, that should give us more than enough room. Now we need to add the toolbar. In the control panel, you'll see there's an icon for the toolbar control. If we double click on that, it will automatically appear at the top of the form. As you can see, it is displaying three icons automatically. If we click on the test to test the dialog, this is what our new form is going to look like. We'll have all the objects that were in our form, plus a toolbar at the top. So let's come out of test mode. We will save that back to our source code and we'll go back into the code to see what has been changed. So first of all, let's go to the function which describes all the objects on our form. And here it is. If we scroll down, we'll find at the bottom of this list is a new control add toolbar. As you will see, it takes a number of parameters. The key ones are the handle of the dialog and the handle we're going to be using for the toolbar. This is a new constant which will appear at the beginning of our code. It's been given a name here and 4 zeros. Toolbars can either appear at the top of your form or at the bottom. However, it's most common for toolbars to appear at the top of a form. And if we scroll down slightly, we'll see there is a new line of code in here, sample toolbar. This function is the function which will display our toolbar on the screen. So let's have a look at that function to see what it is doing with the two parameters it has been passed. There is our function, and here is our code. So we can see the two parameters being passed in by value on the parameters list, the dialog handle and the handle of the toolbar itself. The first thing in this function you can note is that it's all being controlled by PBForms. This is because PBForms has automatically placed this piece of code within your application. You may not want to use this particular function in your own application. You may want to create your own. But we'll push forward with this for the moment to explain what it's actually doing. The first task within this function is to create an image list. We've created a local variable called image list and we are populating it. The first line in here is saying image list new icon. If we hit the F1 on this, we get a list of all the commands that can be used on image lists. And the image list new can either create a bitmap or an icon. And as we can see here, in this case, we're creating an icon. The next two parameters are the width and height of icons that are going to be appearing from this image list on the toolbar. In this case, it has selected 16 by 16 pixels. The 32 is to do with the depth of colour. In this case, this gives you the maximum amount of colour on your icons. The next parameter is the initial number of icons that are going to be contained within this image list. In this case, PowerBasic has added 3 icons for you. And these are added using the image list add icon command. This takes 2 parameters, the first being the handle of the image list, which has been generated by the previous line of code. The next parameter after that is the identifier of the icon that's going to be appearing. As you can see, we appear to be using 3 constants, image file 1, 2, and 3. These are turned into strings using the format $command and preceded with the hash sign. Once we have added all the icons to the image list, we're then using another command, toolbar set image list, to associate this image list with this toolbar. Once we have established this relationship, we can then use the toolbar add button command. This takes again a number of parameters: the handle of the dialog, the handle of the toolbar, the position that you wish to place this icon in this case the first slot, and this new constant, toolbar new 1. We'll come back to these constants in a moment, and it's set to display the icon as a button with the word new underneath it. So we perform this task for each of the buttons we wish to add. We have an open and a save. So let's look at these constants to see how they're being used. And there at the beginning of our code are all these new constants. We have one for each of these. These constants here, the toolbar new, open 1 and save 1, are going to be the events which are triggered when the user clicks on those icons. Image file 1, 2 and 3 are the images to be used for the icons themselves. So where are these icons coming from? If we have a look in the folder that contains our source code, we will see these 3 icons have appeared out of nowhere. PowerBasic has created these 3 icons for you in your folder. You can of course create and use your own icons, but we will continue to use these for today just to show how the system actually works with icons. These are fairly low resolution icons, being 16 by 16 pixels. So where in your code is it referring to the names of these files? We have tbnew, tbopen and tbsave. How are these referenced within your code? If we copy the name and go back to the beginning of the source code and search for the name within your source code, it is not found. So where exactly are we associating the name of the icon with the number that's being used in your code? For this, we need to load up a different type of file. If we select the resource files and load that one up, we will see if we scroll down here, here is a definition of those 3 constants, image file 1, 2 and 3. Further down, this file is an RC data section, and in here we have the relationship between the constant name and the name of the icon. Containing the name of your icon within these resource files is one approach to actually setting these up. We'll use this for this video, but in the next video we're going to be using the resource statements within PowerBasic to embed your resource directly inside your source code and not having to rely on a resource file. But for today, we'll use these and we'll continue forward with our code. So as you can see, this sample toolbar function is performing the task of creating your image list, populating it with the icons, and the toolbar add button commands are adding those icons within that image list to our toolbar. So if we run the code now, let's see what we get. Well, there at the top of the screen we can see our toolbar, However, our rich edit control is overlapping the toolbar at the moment, so we'll need to move the rich edit control down a little bit. So let's go back to the code. If we go back to the function which defines our dialog, if we scroll down a bit, we will see there is the control add command to add our rich edit control. So we'll move that down to say 30 and we'll see if that's enough. Yes, that's much better. So we now have our toolbar at the top of the form, we have our rich edit control, and then we have the rest of the controls on the form. We haven't changed any functionality in the rest of the form, so everything should still work. However, we now have 3 toolbar buttons which we can actually put some code behind. In order to allow our code to identify that the user has clicked on them, we'll need to create some events in our callback function, our event handler. So let's go back to the code and put that code in place. So this is the callback function, the event handler. If we scroll down to find the command section, and here we are, we'll need to put some code in here to handle those events. In the function that created the 3 toolbar buttons, there are 3 constants. Each of these is going to be our event. So first of all, we'll handle the new button. This we can treat like any other button on a form. We can do a test to see whether the button has been clicked or not, and then we can put some code in. All I'm doing in here is putting a piece of code to display a message box on the screen. However, the code you put in here could link to a separate form, or link to a function which will perform something within the application, perhaps loading or saving data. So let's run it now to see if our new button on the toolbar is going to trigger this message box. So move the mouse over the toolbar, click the button, and the message box appears. So our event is being triggered successfully. If we click on either of the other buttons, nothing happens as we have created no events for those yet. So let's paste in some code for those events. And there we have a similar event for each of the other buttons, the open button and for the save button. So this should display message boxes on our screen to indicate that the user has indeed clicked on the button. So let's try running our application again and make sure these buttons are triggering properly. So we have the new button, we have the open button, and we have the save button. Now at the moment, the icons appearing at the top of our screen are 16 pixels wide and high. We can of course amend these to make them larger. So let's go back to the code and have a look to see how we do that. In the sample toolbar section, we have the image list new icon. If we change these 16s to 32 and run the application once more, the toolbar appears larger. We might want to move our rich edit control down slightly further, as we want to keep this toolbar at this size. So let's go back to the form and we will move the rich edit control down slightly further. We'll take that down to 40 and run the application once more. It's now colliding with the index, so maybe not 40, maybe 35. And once more. And that looks much better. Right, now we have a reasonably large toolbar which the user can see, and we have the rich edit control appearing below it and not colliding with any of the other controls. What we will do in the next video is we will go further with the toolbar, add spaces between buttons, and allow the user to turn on or off buttons quite happily from within the application. We will also store our resources within the main section of the source code using the resource commands. However, next we're going to be handling tooltips. One of the things the user can do within the application is to double-click on a row within this list view. Once you double-click, the data appears in the form and you can go ahead and edit it. But there's nothing in the form itself that would indicate to the user that this functionality exists. The user would just have to know it. So one of the advantages in using tooltips is when the user hovers over something, a little message can pop up to tell the user what this function is for or what this control will actually do. And this is where we use tooltips. So let's go back to the code and we'll add tooltips in for some of the objects on our screen. At the beginning of our code, we have a number of libraries. And we're going to add a new library today. And the library we're going to add is called Tooltips. If we have a look at that piece of code, here is our Tooltips library. I've been using this particular library for a long time. I won't go into the code in detail in this library, but there's one function we're going to be using quite a lot. It's going to be the tooltip setTooltip function. It takes two compulsory parameters and two optional parameters. We have a handle, we have the text we want to appear as the tooltip, and we have two colors, one for the background color of the tooltip and one for the text color. This will become clearer when we actually put the code in. In order to turn tooltips on, we need to do something in the event handler, the callback function. If we go to the initialize dialog section of our callback function, which is run before the user gets to see the dialog, we're going to put in here some code which will allow us to control our tooltips. So this is the line of code that's going to be setting up our tooltip. We're calling the tooltip setTooltip function within our new library. We're obtaining the Windows handle of the control we wish to put the tooltip on by giving it two parameters to the getDialogItem API call. The first parameter is the handle of the dialog and the second is the handle of the control. We follow that with the line of text that we wish to appear on the tooltip. And then we're setting the two optional parameters to give us the colors, a yellow background and a blue text. If we run that code now, and we move the mouse down to hover over the exit button, a tooltip will appear. Click to exit this form. Using this approach, the user can see what that button is going to do before they actually click on it. So we can now put tooltips on the rest of the controls. So if we go back to the callback function, and we're going to do a prefix command here because they all begin the same way, and using the prefix command keeps all our tooltips code together and makes it a little easier to follow. So as you can see, we're going to have a tooltip on the abort button, the exit button, the submit button, the text title, the first working pattern, the staff data grid, our rich edit control, and the toolbar itself. One additional piece of functionality I've added to tooltips is this pipe character. It will split the string into two parts. This avoids having a tooltip which is too long. So if we try running the code once more, we should have tooltips on each of these controls. On the toolbar, on the rich edit control, on the title, on the list view. These are particularly useful on the list view as it now tells you double left click to edit a row. And again on the working pattern we have two lines of text on the tooltip. So using this approach, we can use tooltips to add tooltips to any of the controls on our form. Having them in these bright colours I find very useful as they're more visible to the user. However, one thing to watch out for is you cannot have tooltips with separate colours. If we change the last one to be a red background and white text and run the code now, although we have kept all the other tooltips at yellow and blue, they will all appear as the colours on the last defined one. This is because when you're setting this section of code up, whatever the last colour is the one that will dominate. And tooltips must be set up in the initialize dialog section, so before the dialog is displayed to the user. So in summary, what we've done today is we have added a toolbar to our dialog, allowing us to display a number of icons, each of which is giving us a link into somewhere else in the application. This would allow us to display other forms or perform processing functions within the application. Secondly, we have added tooltips to a number of controls. You can put them on all the controls or just a few, giving information on multiple rows of text. You can control the colours these tooltips appear in to highlight information to the user in a way that they cannot miss. Hopefully you'll find these techniques and code useful in your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.